So welcome to this panel on coastal energy, the winning horse for more power. Today we're going to take a look at how to ensure that the extensive deployment of coastal energy technologies can be achieved. We also want to look out for which political measures can effectively pave the way for more coastal energy, and last but not least, how can even more countries unlock their potential for offshore wind, wave, or tidal energy projects? Joining me for this excellent panel are four distinguished guests. I'd like to start here on the left of your screen with His Excellency Mr. Dang Hoang An, the Vice Minister of Industry and Trade for Vietnam. Hello, Minister. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Christopher Butzow, the Director General of the Danish Energy Agency in Denmark. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. Amisha Patel, she is the Head of Public Affairs and Policy for Mainstream Renewable Power. Thank you so much for joining us today. And last but not least, here next to my right, Vera Brunsel, the Director of Public Affairs and Communications for TenneT. Hello, welcome to all of you. I want to get this panel started with the same question for each of you. And I'm going to ask you to keep your responses to 2 minutes, but it's okay, because I'm only asking for one word. And that is, in one word, what is for you the key lever that could unlock the full potential of coastal renewable energies, such as offshore wind, wave, or tidal energy? I'd like to start with you first, Minister.
Yes, actually the coastal energy definition is quite broad, and it including also the offshore wind or wave or tidal. But from my point of view, we should focus on the offshore wind. And I think the key level for Vietnam now actually is the readiness of the system grid. Since nowadays we focus on the development of the onshore wind farm, and we are not so ready for the offshore wind. And so to have a more robust development of the coastal wind farm, so offshore wind, so we should pay attention to the building and increase the capacity of the system grid to connect the offshore wind farm to the system. I think that's key level, a little bit technical. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So for Vietnam, offshore wind, the key lever. Mr. Christoph Butzow, what's for you? You don't actually have to say it in just one word. So.
No, thank you very much. In my perspective, to have these technologies at a larger scale, we need 3 words, actually. De-risking, size, and sector integration. And de-risking, that's a responsibility for the governments. We need to do whatever it takes to de-risk by making transparency, having a good regulation, creating broad political agreements. When it comes to size, we need to count in gigawatt and not in kilowatt. We need to go up to have economies of scale. And lastly, we need sector integration. We need to integrate these new power technologies to other sectors like transport and agriculture by producing power to X, meaning ammonia or hydrogen, for instance.
Thank you very much, Mr. Butzow. Amisha Patel, 1 word, 3 words, your choice.
I'll take 3 words. Stable policy frameworks. I think what I'll start by saying, I'll focus my comments on offshore wind as well, if I may. Through impressive cost reductions and driven by continuous deployment, the offshore wind industry has grown by over 30% per annum in the past decade, out-competing many fossil fuel alternatives. We need to see more of this. So I completely agree with my colleague here as well, that we need this at speed and we need this at scale. So for this to continue, and at the accelerated pace, we need to see supportive policy and stable frameworks. And this has many facets, but I'll leave that for later.
Fantastic supportive policy and frameworks. Vera Brunsel, your words, please.
Yeah, well, it's not surprising. My biggest word is infrastructure. You need to get that on land, onshore. Second word would be speed, because we haven't got much time. And the third would be scale. In the end, it's all about getting bigger, quicker, faster, and, deliver security supply.
Absolutely. I'd like to go into our next round of questions. And for this round, what I'd like to do is take the opportunity to direct a couple of questions at one individual, if that's okay with you. I'd like to start off with Amisha Patel. I want to know a little bit about Mainstream Renewable Power's track record when it comes to offshore wind energy products. Now, in your experience as a project developer, what are some of the common features for the successful implementation of wind offshore projects globally?
Thank you. And there's nothing more than I like to do than talk about Mainstream success in this area. So thank you for your question. Mainstream Renewable Power is one of the most successful developers of offshore wind globally. We've developed and consented 20% of the UK's offshore wind capacity, which is now either in operation or under construction. So we've got a strong legacy of developing projects. And the UK continues to be one of our core markets for developing projects, with more areas opening up. Our Soc Trang 1.4 gigawatt offshore wind development in Vietnam is one of Southeast Asia's largest renewable energy developments, and we're extremely proud of entering the market, being one of the early movers and early entrants into what is set to be a very promising market as well, and we hope that this will pave the way for further developments in the region. We've recently entered the Japanese market as well as a partner in an 800 megawatt floating offshore wind project. So it's not just about fixed anymore. We're also looking at floating offshore wind developments. And we also have an extensive team in the US, which is preparing for participation in several auctions across the United States, really just focusing on the developments there and sort of fulfilling the Biden administration's 30 gigawatts target. So we hope to be a part of that. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. And of course, we're continuing to influence renewable energy and offshore wind policy across the globe in promising offshore wind markets. Common features for success. Now, I've already talked about policy, so I won't talk about that right now. But what I will say is collaboration is extremely important. So it's not just government alone, it's industry and governments working together and then collaborating and engaging stakeholders. So stakeholder engagement is a critical factor for success and for common success. So early and effective stakeholder engagement, critical to the success of a project. And I think this is about making sure that local communities where we're developing projects are brought along the way. This is going to be a technology that is new to several areas in the world. So we need to make sure that everyone is educated and informed about this. Stakeholders include other marine users as well, other ocean users. So coexistence is critical to the success of a project as well. Relationship with other marine users and the protection of sensitive ecosystems is critical. And then engaging with the supply chain, another set of key stakeholders. We need supply chains and we need to look at local value creation when we're developing projects as well. And these are just some of the common factors that are needed for success.
These are some good common factors. I want to have a follow-up question for you. As a market player, what do you think, one or two examples of what we need right now to rapidly ensure the extensive deployment of coastal technologies?
In addition to what I've said then, I guess supporting infrastructure in parallel, so ports and commitments to upgrading these, grid expansion as well, it's really, really essential. And I think something that I've picked up over the course of the 2 days are discussions around interconnection and how this is important as well to delivering energy security. So offshore wind is set to be a really scalable, is set to be a critical part of our energy security moving forward. So we need to make sure that we utilize the best wind resource. So interconnection is exceptionally important.
Thank you very much, Amisha Patel. Vera Brenzel, I saw you nodding your head a couple of times, and I'd actually love to ask you a question now. I wonder if you can tell me a little bit more about how transmission grid operators can drive forward the energy transition in general, and more specifically, what role do they play in developing the deployment of renewable energy in coastal areas?
Well, look, we come from an energy system that basically the power stations were built close to industry, or close to the load. Now we're moving to a sort of entirely new architecture where the rich endowments of renewable, I would say, yield potentials are the base of the future energy supply. And the North Sea, I think, is the world's largest energy endowment, and offshore energy per se specifically is, I think, the most cost efficient. And I think our colleague, the minister from Vietnam, can maybe also support that. That is why I think lots of countries are following this path. And we're together. I'm looking at Danish colleagues, and together with the UK, with the Netherlands, and we're an operator in the Netherlands and in Germany. We see that it's very, very important to set up a target grid and then backcast, specifically to know where do we have to start now in order to be able to deliver 30 gigawatts. That's what the German government wants until 2030. The Dutch government wants 20. That is a heck of a lot. That's 50 times big power stations. So what do we have to do? We need scale. We need to double up in half of the time. And doing that means that, you need larger converters, larger power interconnectors, and that is only possible if we really, have those value chains or supply chains, as we just heard, seamless, if we have the right talents and if we have the right political support. And planning and permitting in Europe is a big hinder.
We did talk in an earlier panel about bureaucracy. This is definitely an issue for policy to solve. I want to come back because in October of last year, so actually quite recently, TenneT presented a technological innovation called the Wind Power Booster, which is kind of a great name. And it's going to enable an accelerated expansion of offshore wind energy use in the North Sea. Is that correct? Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because normally you would have a wind farm, then a interconnection to land. Now, if you do that for 50 gigawatt until 2030, it's going to be a salad of interconnection. So what we try to do is to affect as little as possible, the nature, the biosphere, and also acceptance. So what we try is to bundle, like in a hub and spoke system, building multi-hub terminals, and the first one is up in northern Germany, and basically, it connects a whole number of accesses from wind power farms and brings that energy and wheels that over to onshore. The Wind Booster has a triple benefit. The first one is really the bundling. The second thing is basically also to be able to connect different wind farms and then also level out, the different electricity inject or in feed. And the third is that we also try to set pave the way for hybrid projects. Hybrid project means that we not only connect, but we also wheel over to, let's say, Denmark, to UK. And by then, we try to level out the grid and create security of supply.
Thank you very much. You mentioned Vietnam earlier. I'd like to head now to the Minister from Vietnam. Your Excellency, at the COP26 in Glasgow last year, Vietnam's Prime Minister pledged that Vietnam is going to reach its net zero carbon emissions target by 2050. Congratulations first on this very ambitious pledge. Now, Vietnam currently foresees 18 gigawatts of additional wind capacity by 2030. What role is offshore wind going to play in reaching this target?
Yeah, we see the other offshore wind could be the solution for Vietnam to meet the target announced in the COP26. And we have a plan to increase the portion of the offshore wind up to 20% of the system capacity in 2045, and which is a huge number. So that's the basic idea for Vietnam in the preparation of the implementation phase for the COP26 targets.
How does Vietnam plan to attract investors for offshore wind projects that were going to take place in the near future?
A good question. I met a lot of investors coming to Ministry of Industry and Trade of Vietnam, and they asked me about the same question: what we can provide to them. Yeah, but I can guarantee to all the investors that we have very fast-growing market for them, And for the investor, the market is the most important factor, since we can guarantee to them that the demand of the power shall increase at the 8 or 9% each year from now on up to next 20 years. And so that their revenue and it's very ensure. And secondly, we have prepared very clear and transparent legal framework for the investor when they come to Vietnam and if they are interested, so they may apply for the project. So I think that's very key.
It is definitely key to get investors on your side. What about public support? What kind of schemes do you have in place to get the public on board for this offshore wind projects?
Yeah, I think for the offshore wind, almost we don't have much any the complaint from the public society and so on. But for the onshore wind, so sometimes we can see the local community they may not so support, especially when the project make the consequences to forest, for example. Yeah, but for offshore wind, I think absolutely the local authority, the local community, they are supporting such project. I don't think that's any problem.
Thank you so very much, Minister. I'd like to turn now to Christopher Butzau. Denmark is a pioneer in the development of offshore wind power. The country also has the world's longest experience with tenders for offshore wind power. I would like to learn from you. What are some positive lessons you've learned so far?
Yes, well, I think there's a lot actually, but let me take you just 10 years back in time. And we had a tender in Denmark for the Anholt wind farm, 400 megawatt. It ended up with only one bidder. It was an immature market. And we need to support by 15 euro cents per kilowatt hour. And then let me take you back to November last year, where we had the Thor tender. We had 6 pre-qualified bidders and 5 saying almost that they didn't needed any support, and they were willing to pay 400 million euros to the Danish government to have this spot for the next 30 years. And it tells me that within 10 years we have moved from an immature technology, immature industry, towards a very professional industry and a cost-effective industry. And some of the main features and some of the main focus from a government side has been on focusing entirely on the price and entirely on de-risking. Do it as transparent as possible. No local content requirement. International competition. And a very high degree of market dialogue. Being in contact with the market all the time. Asking the pre-qualified bidders, what can we do to bring the price down from a government perspective? And actually, I think we managed last year to tell Denmark and maybe the rest of the world that offshore wind is not a supporting game anymore. It's actually an income game for the Ministry of Finance. So we have changed the game within 10 years. And just to stress, look at the price. That's the best way of having a professional market and a professional industry.
Thank you. I want to follow that up. You talked a bit, you started 10 years ago and it was too early for the market. What other roadblocks has Denmark encountered in the past years, and how did the country overcome them? And because now you're the country with, I believe, the highest share of offshore wind in your electricity mix.
More than 50% of our electricity comes from wind, both onshore and offshore. And we were actually the first one in the world to start up with offshore in 1991. So we have more than 30 years of experiences. Well, as I told you before, look at the price. But we also realized 10 years ago that you need to put the offshore wind away from the coast. If you do it too close, you you can have a lot of critical voices from the coast. So if you go 10 kilometers or more, maybe 20, you can reduce the local opposition, and this is actually a good story. It's very important for the society that we have this large renewable energy production. And if we have local communities that are very much against it, the story of the green transition will be harmed. So put it out at sea, 20 kilometers or so, then you'll have the support. That's one of the roadblocks that we crashed into 10 years ago. And now we have set at least 15 kilometers from coast, or even longer.
Thank you for sharing that roadblock. You know, I come to these panel sessions with a list of questions that I'm prepared to ask. But what's so wonderful about having you all here is that I get to see as you respond to one another. And I'd love to open the panel up for, please, Amisha Patel.
I just want to build on that, and you know, complete agreement there that there's a lot of opposition due to the visual impacts, and the industry's really grappled with that. But I'm going to fly the floating offshore wind flag here as well. Over 80% of the world's of the global sort of coastal offshore wind capacity lies within deeper waters. So the emergence of floating offshore wind technology opens us up to being able to alleviate some of those problems and sort of go in and really utilize deeper waters and the extensive wind resource that is available there as well. And we're seeing a lot of markets open up to offshore wind because of floating technology.
Thank you very much for that, Amisha Patel. I want to make sure we have time to say closing statements, but I also don't want to cut this discussion short.
I would have a question to you, Christoph, because in the end, we meet each other in the North Sea, and we are the infrastructure providers. I think we connect many Danish wind farms. And the question would be, how do we design a market where in the end we have national energy policies, but we have a European or a North Sea cooperation? And maybe you have an idea on that?
Well, we need to use the EU as a driver, I think. But we also need to look abroad. If you look at the North Sea, some of our neighbors are not part of the EU anymore, so we cannot do it entirely in the EU. But we need surely to have the right instruments to cooperate with each other, because look at Denmark. We have a large share of the North Sea, but we do not have the demand that can have the intake. So we need connections to Germany, we need connections to Netherlands, Belgium, UK. So we need to create a North Sea grid, actually, connecting the countries.
Yeah, maybe I can echo that, because I mean we're working on a DC meshed system, which is I think it's very innovative and hugely game changer, because we are just leveling up in a short time and being able to connect together. So that's a very good chance.
Thank you very much. I see you all nodding along with each other, which is a real pleasure for me as a moderator. You make my job really easy, so thank you so much. I want to open the conversation up again to our minister from Vietnam, Mr. Dang Hoang An. Please, I'd love for you to leave us with some parting thoughts. Your final statements.
Yes, there are a lot of work to do in Vietnam, so to prepare for the more ambitious green energy sector. So coming back to our topic today, so that, as I mentioned before, the duty now of Vietnam is to prepare the system infrastructure for the coastal energy. And as I mentioned before, the coastal energy, especially the offshore wind, is the solution for Vietnam, but also it's the must for Vietnam. Since we really don't see another way to meet the target of COP26. And since in Vietnam we are the country who has to import a lot of the primary fuel, like coal, like the LNG and so on. So we see, so the coastal, the offshore wind, it's the mass for Vietnam, and that's really a lot of work to do.
Thank you very much. The idea of the work that we have ahead of us, I'd like to bring that in to the rest of the group. Mr. Christoph Butzau, what work still has to be done? What priorities do we have to set in order to effectively pave the way for more coastal energy?
Yeah, the pave way is to have the system ready to accept the power from the offshore farm with the bigger scale, like my colleagues say. Since we have experience like that. We used to have the very big power complex like 4,000 or 6,000 megawatt onshore. So for Vietnam, it would not be any problem. And from technology point of view, for the transmission, we have very long extra high voltage line connecting across the region. So I think that's okay. Even with the submarine extra high voltage. So from technology point of view, that's no problem for Vietnam. But the only important thing is now we have the master plan for power development, and from now on to 2030, and also the looking up to the 2045 will be approved soon by the government first, so make the framework for the investor to pour in Vietnam. And secondly, we are trying our best to solve whether some the obstacle in the project application and so on. I think that's two things to do now, urgently.
Thank you very much. Mr. Butzau, I'd love to hear from you. Which priorities need to be defined to effectively pave the way for more coastal energy?
Actually, I think I want to repeat myself from the beginning, because I think if you're a government, then please do whatever it takes to de-risk. Go up in size. Get the economies of scale. And focus on sector integration. I think that's the new keyword, and that will be the gate for offshore wind into other sectors and industries.
Thank you very much. Amisha Patel, what do we need to do to pave the way?
Well, I'm in agreement with a lot with what Christopher has said, but I think the one thing that I guess I want to kind of leave the audience with here is something that's been emphasized across the 2 days, and which has been very encouraging. And that's this acknowledgement that offshore wind delivers energy security. Offshore wind can fill the gap left by retiring fossil fuel, and it can meet increasing demand and reduce our reliance on imported energy, which we've been talking about energy independence over the course of the last few weeks. So that's a really important acknowledgement. So echoing again, yes, policy drivers and collaboration between industry and governments to streamline processes and really realize the benefits of coastal energies across the world. So that momentum to continue.
So important for that momentum to continue. The theme of this BETD is from ambition to action. We have to take the momentum that we have brought, that everyone here has brought to these 2 days. We need to take it back to our home countries, back to our home corporations, and really take ambition and turn it into action. Vera Brunsell, I'd like to come to you to close out our round. What priorities need to be defined to pave the way for more coastal energy?
Well, I would like to repeat myself as well, and I could not, support more of what my colleagues have said. I think planning and processing is where planning and permitting, that process needs to be streamlined. It's always very, very flattering to bring out new targets, but then we need to do the afterwork, to the implementation. That is really something that I really call on governments to get going. But I think the beauty of this entire discussion that we have here, we're really fixing the trilemma. We're using, for example, the Asian qualifications to provide, supply chains, talents, and also scale for to bring volumes of renewables. We know that together we can provide security of supply if we work together, the UK, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Germany. And I think that is a big discussion these days. And I think affordability is also something that we have not touched upon, but scale is the back of the coin of affordability, because we make it more accessible, cost efficient, and in the end, we have a long-term feasibility or also, price insurance. And that's what you were calling de-risking. We don't have a de-risked fossil world these days.
What is it going to take us to get there? For you, Vera Brandsell, and for our panel, because affordability is a really big issue.
Affordability, I think the three big levers of affordability are economies of scale, standardization, and reducing basically the entire, throughput. It takes 8 years today, up to 10 years to produce a new interconnector. We could do it in half of the time if we sit together. And I give you an example. The emergency synchronization of Ukraine and Moldova took 3 weeks, and we were another 2 years. It was planned to take another 2 years. But if people want it, if we have the resolve, we got resolute answers, and we can make it. We can do it.
We can do it. I can't add anything to that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into this panel. I want to name my wonderful panelists one more time. From the left, His Excellency Mr. Dang Hoang An, Vice Minister of Industry and Trade for Vietnam. Mr. Christopher Butzow, the Director General of the Danish Energy Agency in Denmark. Amisha Patel, Head of Public Affairs and Policy for Mainstream Renewable Power. And Vera Brandsell, the Director of Public Affairs and Communications for TenneT. This has been our panel on coastal energy, the winning horse for more power. I think I'm going to go ahead and bet on this winning horse for more power.